rise for the pledge of allegiance. Back here. Pledge of
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
You have no public comment.
Hold on, William is on there. William, are you approving the agenda?
Yes, ma'am.
No public comments.
Okay. Approval of January 25th committee meeting.
So moved.
A second.
Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Smith? Can't hear you.
I abstain.
Okay.
Now we're down to discussion of facility plan, master facility master plan book. Ms. Carroll?
I can start. So I wanted to see kind of what you all wanted to do. I'm prepared to kind of walk you through some of the things there since this committee kind of hasn't had that. We did a walkthrough, I think, for operations.
Right.
But we haven't done it for you all. So Robert, if you will share the screen, can you do that with me? And I can pull this up and kind of walk you through some items.
Okay.
And just because this book is different. So this is different, like I said. What we did was, again, pull out that list of projects that we've always had at the end, with the summer list and all the capital projects, and that is gone. But we still take you through a review of what instructional programs are and what some of those needs are that affect facilities. We look at the student enrollment and projections and those trends, both at the district level, cluster level, school level. And then we kind of outline plans for what future capital projects are that are needed. And again, we pulled that list off. Now we have a separate approval list that will be coming to you later in the spring.
Probably looking like May.
Probably looking like May at this point. But what is in here is what we think are needed for the next 5 years. As always, I start with the planning triangle. We look at programs, we look at facilities, and we look at demographics, because why a triangle? If you make a move to one of those things, it affects the other two sides of that. And planning goes that same way. So we'll start out with that, and then the book is laid out in that exact same format. So looking at programs initially, we cover what all the different programs, that instructional types of programs that are in there. And that doesn't just talk about choice programs, that talks about early childhood, special education, career and tech, those things that aren't necessarily a choice program, but are things that we do offer in schools. Even just the variance between regular elementary, middle, and high versus K instruction. We're talking a little bit about alternative programs and adult education in this. So those descriptions are in there. And we would work closely this year with the instructional services staff and Dr. Stratos in developing this. We also talked this year because the board had directed us to take a look at programmatic capacity. So there's a section on program capacity. And this chart just gives you a highlight of the differences. The last time we had calculated it was in 2018. So we're showing you that calculation, this year's calculation, the actual building capacity with and without mobiles.
Can I ask you? a
Yeah,
question?
yeah, ask, yeah.
What student faculty ratios would you use to determine programmatic capacity?
So that's the next slide we're looking at. And it is in the book. There's a page in the book, and let me, hold on, I'll tell you what page it is. It's on page 33. So that,
I need you all to speak, not Carol, but I just need you all to speak up just a little bit when you're asking your questions, since we don't have a mic in front of you, so the mics around can pick up, so you have to travel over there.
so we use the basic funding ratio, that we're given from, finance department. And then we work closer with, special ed to really kind of drill down into what their specific needs are. Because I think before we had just a generic 12-to-1 or it was from 2018. But so these are the numbers we used specifically this year.
But I saw it was a graph state saying Title I student faculty ratio is lower. Title I schools student faculty ratio is lower than non-Title schools.
It kind of depends on how they use their Title I teacher money, but that is true as well. So we did dive a little deeper, and I don't think we've got that listed on here. Probably should have been, for Title I teacher funding, and it may be at a 15. I know we did have some calculations that were at a lower rate for certain teacher classrooms than what, let's say it was third grade. According to this, it should have been 22, and they were getting funding for a lower teacher ratio, so that was 15.
16,
Yes. 16, okay. I mean, right.
So what we are seeing though, when you did program capacity is what you have, that you showed there.
For the most part, it was calculated, again, if that was a Title I teacher ratio, then it was calculated without.
It was
And
calculated.
it just didn't make that, this list, I apologize. It's a good question. Because there are some instances, there were some other little grant money things, I think, too, that created some unique situations.
I have to talk to Tanya because I'm sure not seeing that kind of student ratio in Title I school.
Why not?
And I don't
You're
know-
not seeing 22.
Pardon me?
You're not seeing 22. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm seeing about,
Oh,
when I go to Shanklin, I go to Broad River, I go into those IPs when they go into
Yeah.
count those Broad River.
Robert.
And then you have others that are going to be very low.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when you look at a school, what, for example, Broad River, what they do is they have a new teacher. The new teacher gets about 16, 17 kids. And they're more experienced teachers. I counted runs 24.
And certain schools use those Title I teachers to do, again, this is the instructional, but
Yeah.
they add the
Coaches.
teachers, the coaches and those type of things too, so that they get that extra coach to help.
So that was gonna be my question. So when a school gets Title I monies, they're pretty much allowed to use it how they want, correct? You don't have to say because you're a Title I school, your classroom, your student to teacher ratio has to be such, and therefore you have to use your money.
There are
classrooms.
rules they have to follow, but it's up to the principal on
Yeah,
how
that's
they,
what I thought.
how they
So,
spend the
so, oh, I hear you. No, I know.
And so that's why we always talk about program capacity, change every year. And if you ever change these funding ratios, I think we're talking about that, then that would, again, change that whole programmatic capacity.
My concern is that people will look at this and say, well, okay, look at all this overcapacity you have in the schools. Well, when I walk through the schools, I'm not seeing a lot of rooms that aren't being utilized. I mean, I've had kind of computer rooms and other, basically I don't go down the hall to see spaces. So what are we doing? Spaces, maybe, I don't know, but some of the, I haven't checked out the capacities. I take these in, when I go to the schools, I take this in with me. And I do the counting and so obviously it's changed since last year. I was using last year's. Is it?
We actually just had the conversation this morning. I was talking about one of the things I think we need to try to capture is what is the average teacher-student ratio for each of the different grades in each different school, because this doesn't give you the story of what's going on in the school. Now, and you're going to find though, most schools south of Broad are going to be at these ratios or higher.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
Yes.
I mean, it's not even going to be a question.
And you're not gonna find a coach in a classroom, you're gonna find them in a little
Room closet.
cubby. Yeah, room closet.
Yeah,
kind of
right,
thing.
right.
Well, right. Yeah. So, I do think this lends for more continued discussion on,
Yeah.
program capacity, we calculate, kind of what are our next steps and what do we want to do with that data.
So when the district has the, well, I won't say authority, but the school has authority to increase or decrease the student ratio in those classes. That come through, Stratus office?
I don't,
I think the answer to that is yes.
Yeah.
Because what's going to impact that is like right now, finance is meeting with the schools to talk about the number of teachers they need.
Okay.
And it's really set now. So throughout the year, they may grow and request additional
Right.
teachers due to growth, but it's very hard to get teachers throughout the year. So they may, let's just say, had all the intention of right now being 22-1, and all of a sudden they got a big influx of students and they can't hire more teachers. Well, guess what? Those ratios are going to go up. I think there
And
is a limit.
conversely, kind of too, when we saw some drops,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
didn't cut
didn't cut.
we didn't cut any
Yes.
teachers, so some of them, if you go in a classroom, there's some low
There
ratios.
were.
It's because of that.
Yeah.
So hopefully that has worked to our advantage for the students.
And let me, it's not just finance. Usually those teacher, the financial meetings are with HR, finance, and school. So that's kind of where those decisions are made on the number of teachers.
One of our problems is, of course, when people do an analysis of our ratios and capacity, it shows very obviously what the question is packed. Hilton Head's relatively flat, and Northwood, slightly down, low, and so there's, wow, that's easy. You know what they say. Let's consolidate. You'll save a lot of money. There's other factors too.
I love it.
Right, and I think that that's some of the purpose of this committee is because you're absolutely right. That was the mantra that I heard when, about the referendum.
Right.
Well, if we agree to this, and support this referendum, it has to be, you have to guarantee that you're gonna look at the, undercapacity utilization of some of the schools.
That was
I mean, so,
Yeah, that was the argument I used as well. I said, look, we have to take care of overcapacity first. That's why the first referendum is going to dealing with overcapacity. Because undercapacity, heck, we can do that next. But let's get this. We got kids sitting in the hallway.
right.
But now it looks like we're back to overcapacity.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
I would say we did not complete. Well, you got to realize, like back in 2019, when we had the McKibben report, it said Bluffton was not growing.
That's right.
Right.
So the referendum was designed around Bluffton not growing. We all see that was not true. So, I mean, we did not, we are behind again.
Yeah.
But that's not what we're here.
So what it is.
But they're all related.
Well, I don't think that we're that much under capacity over here with the spaces that we have. I intend to disagree with that. And then also over here, we have a different underlying things going on over here in terms of we have not only just in the, not only in the we have an achievement gap over here, but also we have an opportunity to make right with the utilizing of the space that we do have. I mean, so I don't see the same problems being or view the issue as we see as an unused of space. But maybe we should figure out ways that we could utilize space that we do have, including smaller class sizes and other things to help out with the achievement gap. So I think that we're kind of spinning our wheels in the direction that we should not be going. I mean, sure, I'm sure everyone feels some type of way about alternate unused. Well, if you have kids, what would you do with it? What are some of the principles? How do they see? Or what is the superintendent? What is his take on it? How can he see our district moving in terms of utilizing the space that we have to get kids up to speed and up to reading on grade level? So I mean that's what I want to hear more.
So, and that's good, because it's in here. Some of that is in here in the book. So,
But you can't deny, you gotta start somewhere. That's,
Right.
so I think we're all on the same page.
Oh, yeah.
Every single one of us
Yeah.
wants to be able, you missed some of the conversation that Colonel Geyer started with, talking about ensuring smaller class sizes and so on. So you weren't here for that. But you gotta look at what you have to start with before you can start making changes. And that's why we're looking at this today. So no one here is saying, and I want to say that loud and clear, no one here is saying that there are not great opportunities to give some individualized and small group and program changes to utilize the facilities that we have. That's why we started this group, so that we could explore those options. And like Ms. Crutchfield said, you have to look at the operations and instruction and everything together before you can move forward.
There's another factor, and that's the community. The Rail Branch schools are the Rail Branch community.
Right,
The St. Helena school, the St. Helena community.
absolutely.
And that has a value that is not shown in here, but it's something that we have to take into consideration.
Mossy Oaks, Beaufort Middle,
Yes.
Ash Community School. I mean, those are all
Yes.
at Port Royal, historic building. I mean, everything has to be taken into consideration. I totally agree. Not just about the numbers.
I'm gonna jump back and talk about numbers. Just because that's where we ended. So I just pulled up, because there's lots of charts and graphs in this, but I just pulled up a couple of these, an example. And again, not necessarily talking about program, well, I have program capacity on that line that you see from each little individuals. And I added a program capacity on here. So interestingly enough, this one, and kind of some different ones. So Broad River, the program capacity is actually higher than the building capacity. And then the blue line is what the student numbers are, and the dotted line is what we say is that needed capacity to give us that flexibility in space. And then Beaufort, you see the building capacity is higher than program. And then like Coosa, which we know, its needed capacity is above its program and building capacity, but because we have mobiles there, that red dotted line with the mobiles gives us enough space there in that particular building.
That's another
Yeah.
flag, the
Yes.
mobiles.
Correct.
We don't want to continue to say that's the solution.
I think one thing that addresses Mr. Smith's concern is Dr. Strata has really sort of developed what she sees academic needs are that affect facilities and what she would like to see go in there. And like all schools should have adequate dedicated space for professional development. That means a space they can meet and do what they need to do to get their teachers where they need to be, or develop stronger, or work on that achievement gap. And if you don't have the space to do that, it makes it harder. So that's a wonderful use of any extra space. And you see that, like Broad River, they've got a room, but that's exactly what they use for. And that should be something to do. Literacy coaches, again, because they can see small groups, bigger groups, they can work with folks. They should have a space to be able to do that. So these are some of those things that were taken into account in the program capacity calculation, and we need to kind of look at that a different way. So she identified some of those needs. She identified lots of needs, but we pulled out the ones that really affected facilities and how we use space. That last one, other items for potential community board discussion, I think is something, again, that would talk about space and how we use space, collaboration with the county recreational programs, as well as integration of community services for health, medical, and adult education. Again, opportunities for what can happen in our
The
spaces.
county had just hired a consultant firm to look at the recreation programs. In fact, they had a meeting last night. They had two, one in Burton Wells, and they had one in Derry
Okay.
to talk about. And meet the community, find out what they're thinking of. So they're going to that now.
So then the demographic section, and you'll see very little change in the book there. You know, we look at the number of students attending at 45 day by grade and by school.
What happened 14 years ago? Look at,
Adrian.
43. Look at the numbers for ninth graders. Something
So-
happened 14 years ago.
No, what that is retention.
Oh,
Oh.
ninth grade's always.
Ninth grade's always high. 10th grade's always higher than 11th grade, always. And it's usually higher than 8th grade too. So it's retention. I've never gone back and studied, you know, what that looks like, trend ninth grades and that over time, but yes. That will be an accurate. And then we look at the zone students, how many students live in the attendance zones, again, by school and by grade. And then the number of students, which I could not locate on the map. And I will say that was a little higher this year than it usually is, but still within acceptable ranges. Again, we've got the individual sheets and maps that we always have that show you where the students that attend that school actually live. This one's Coosa, but you see that there are students who attend Coosa from all over northern Beaufort County. We do the projection there, and we do the transfers in and out. And remember, that is for all reasons, not just choice. That includes employee courtesy. That would include special ed if someone's in a special ed center program. And then we're still reporting the ethnicity between the attendance and the zone because of Office of Civil Rights, because this goes to them and they ask for that report.
Can I ask you a question about one of them? Okay, so underneath the chart, projected resident students, and then down below that, you have 2 first-year anticipated growth, and then -9 for the 5th-year anticipated growth. So that correlates with the chart above.
The chart above. So
And
and it's just not, it's for the gray total, not the choice effect.
And so basically what you're saying, based on however you do your magic algorithms, you're saying that you're anticipating that 5 years from now, they'll be down 9 students.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. How do you, in layman's terms, how do you figure that out?
So.
I mean, that's
Crystal, it's a
specific.
crystal ball, yes. No, it's not. It's just, it's a mathematical model.
I
So
mean,
it takes a
you're-
look at, for elementary and for kindergarten, pre-K, and first grade, it looks at births from 4, 5, and 6 years ago. So I get that birth data. And then it's proportioned out, by zones. And so it looks at how many kids that were born 5 years ago showed up for kindergarten this year to
Okay.
come up with a survival rate, a cohort survival rate. What percentage of kids did CUSA get of those births?
Okay.
And then, so it does that for all of the schools.
Mhm.
Then it starts looking at historical, again, resident students is what I look at. And it says, okay, how many kindergartners became first graders, how many first graders became second graders, and all those moving through. And then it puts a weighted average. So it takes the most recent trend, most recent cohort, and puts more weight on it and less weight on the past years.
Okay.
So it assumes that whatever trend you're seeing now is sort of a more valid trend than 5 years ago trend, which is,
Yeah.
But it does
which
all
kind of
that,
makes sense.
it's small neighborhood.
And it does it, yeah.
So
I'm
it's
trying
not
to say
just
it at a
CUSA.
school level.
It's all these small units that it's calculating that to each little unit and then
Uh-huh.
adding them together.
Correct.
To get CUSA.
And have you ever gone back after a period of time and just to check the veracity of the information? I mean, did you go,
We haven't done it for a while, but we have in the
No, we
past,
haven't.
and we were, it was
Spring.
incredibly, yeah.
For like the district, we're usually less than 100.
no kidding, for the entire, for 22,000 or 21,000?
And percentage wise, it's been
Please.
right, I think the worst I ever was like 2.5% off.
In the year that she was 2.5% off, that was like 2006, or whenever the federal government, it was due to the immigrants and there were a lot of immigrants placed in Beaufort County.
Yeah, we had something, it
And we had a huge influx of Spanish-speaking immigrants.
It's like
Um,
65 or
I don't remember,
Okay.
everybody
was a
remember?
whole bunch, it was
Yeah.
like all at once.
all at
Yeah,
once
and it
that
was,
there.
it was from Haiti and other places,
Right.
mostly in the Bluffton area. So we had this huge spike and we were way off. It's kind of like COVID. We're off in COVID too,
We're
but
definitely off in COVID too, but
Okay. All right,
but
thank you.
crystal ball didn't-
outside of that, she's pretty dead on.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that information there is really very interesting. As you went through the schools north of the Broad, and you start looking, okay, in 5 years, down 11, down 9. You're not seeing, there were very few that were positive. I think maybe Port Royal was positive. It was up 19 in 5 years from now. But, so I just thought that was really very interesting information. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Never looked
And
at
I think
that.
there's there's
Oh,
a
yeah.
description sort of, it kind of gives an overview on how that is all calculated.
No, that was fine. Verbal is much better than trying to
Verbal
read it.
sometimes better, yes, okay. Again, these are, you're familiar with those, you've seen
Yeah.
them. And then we just take sort of the big picture look at everything too. We put all the data together. Because we have had a pandemic with COVID-19, I wanted to be able to say, let's look at all the projections for the past 3 years. So when I look at the district-wide and the North Broad and then each cluster, I'm showing the projections from 19, I'm showing the projections from 20 and 21. Because certainly in 19, we were on a different path
Yeah.
than we are on now. So let's take a look at that and try to understand what's going on and what effect, I keep saying, what effect COVID has
But it's
had on
true.
us. But it certainly, let us, we were on one path and then it
Yeah.
lost us and we have to take a look. So with Northern Beaufort County, again, the blue line here is the current year projection. The yellow line is last year's projection and the green line is 2019 pre-COVID projection. Total capacity. And again, when we talk about that needed capacity, to be able to have that available space in the building to be flexible, that's what that gray dotted line is the needed capacity. So you'll find there's one for district-wide, there's one for Northern Beaufort County as a whole, Southern Beaufort County as a whole, and then each cluster. So for Beaufort cluster, that trend line didn't change, just dropped a little lower for all students.
Yeah.
for Battery Creek, it really took a dip. And from what we were projecting in 19, where we were actually projecting a little increase, we've seen some new students over here. And that could change again, which is why we do projections every year. Sorry.
Wilbranch. Wilbranch looks Wilbranch Elementary, and I see Wilbranch Middle minus 103, Wilbranch Elementary minus 17, to get Wilbranch High plus 44.
Yeah. So
Is that because of the people coming from choice into the early
that could
college?
potentially be. Yeah.
That's it.
44.1.
So if you look at
3.1.
Let me pull that one up and look at it. Exactly.
That's like you can see the dots.
You see the same thing on Hilton Head. It's kind of interesting. The elementary schools are in decline, but the middle and higher. It has, I mean, that's a
the
private
demographics
school.
of the new people in private schools.
Mhm.
And I don't know what the impact is on Wilbur. You may have some homeschooling going on and then they come back.
Yeah.
That too.
Correct. Come back, go to early college.
Well, it's the biggest part in.
No kidding.
It definitely is. But it's looking at predicting some growth, at least at the high school. But again, if you remember with the COVID, we didn't see a big drop, no drop whatsoever at the high schools. It was all at the elementary level and then, minimal change at the middle school level. So I think that's still being reflected there. Hilton Head and Angela are the other clusters. So here's where the facility master plan section, that third section, third part of the triangle there. It's really where we see some different changes from what we had. Because again, there's no project list here. And we divided these projects up into 3 different categories: additional student capacity, strengthening district infrastructure, and then facility modernization. So that whole section there takes those projects and sorts out into those particular 3 categories.
Changes for students.
We don't have any plan. That's part of that's part of our reporting.
Yeah.
Why it's in the book is, that's
It's not really.
what we're required to report for the, I think it's one of your OEs, and it's also part of the syllabus.
Mostly, rather, there shouldn't be too much change.
It just really depends on what the instructional intent of the different facilities is going to be going toward. I mean, if there is going to be any change. I mean, that's how I see it. We know, if you look on the page that talks about capacity triggers, right? And that was a question that I had.
That's the programs.
So
Page
Page
35.
35, thanks. So board action for capacity triggers, it says less than 50% closure / consolidation level every examined school in relation to neighboring schools. I mean, I think that's key, and it's also in relation to academic intent and plans and so on. So this was capacity usage. Is this building capacity or this is
That was
building?
built off building.
This is building, just wanted to make sure.
It's these guide triggers for guidelines have been in place probably 10 years. It's been a long time.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say when we did rezone discussions for all the schools
That was
back
the
in
last time, that was the last
2010,
time we did
11,
anything about changing
something
it.
like that. That's when the board sort of set these in place, and it just.
Yeah, so that was part of the reason that I think this committee was designed was because it looks like we have hit that trigger. And so therefore, some thought has to be put into it. I don't know necessarily exactly which road to go down or how to ascertain that. You know, it's going to have to be a discussion way more than just the building capacity, like you just said. But there are several schools that would require that trigger, and they're all north of the Broad. So if you turn to page 49, I think this is very interesting, just looking again, just at north of the Broad schools. And you look at the building, the percent for the building capacity, and then the percent for the program capacity. Like Beaufort L goes from 38 to 49, still under the 50 capacity trigger, but that's, you know, again. But then you look at something like Ladies Island Middle School, 44% building, but 60% capacity. So it wouldn't be triggered if we were just looking at capacity. I mean, I'm not saying anything anybody doesn't know. I'm just trying to make it all make sense. And
I think that's part of why you all asked us to take a look at programs, knowing that buildings do get used different ways because of what is in the building.
right. So it absolutely has to be part of that conversation.
Davis, what percentage of that building is Head Start using?
I don't know exactly, but it's close to 50-50. They've got at least 50%.
If not more.
Yeah,
I was thinking we just had the front hallway and a couple of classrooms down the main hall. We'll get it again. They have a lot of the classrooms in that.
They have,
Yes.
if not, they have more than we do.
So they're using all the classrooms.
Yeah, we've allowed them to. Yes. They have a front hallway.
Right, yeah.
We have all of those rooms.
There may be some in the back that aren't being used.
Now, in Grand Branch Elementary, they're using all that classrooms, right? So they don't have no extra space right now, that you know of.
There may be a classroom that they're using for something. It's not sitting empty now, it's just space. Yeah.
Which one is that?
Well, Branch Elementary.
You need Freddie.
I know. Freddie can tell you exactly.
I think another very interesting graphic that you showed for just north of the Broad was the here. It had special education.
That would be in that program section. There, where we talked about spend. I think it's one of her.
I think that
25, but is that the one you're talking about with the special education student population?
Yes.
And is that growing?
It did grow this year by 156 students, yes.
And what's also interesting is when you take a look at Mossy Oaks right now, they're higher than Beaufort L because I believe there were several programs that moved from Beaufort L to Mossy Oaks. And when you're talking 24% of your population are students identified with special needs, that puts a very big strain on your administration. That puts I'm just saying IEP meetings, mandatory LEAs. It puts, so that too has to be part of a conversation, I think, when you're looking at maybe utilizing building space and administration appropriately. You have one school that has that. So between Beaufort L, Mossy Oaks, Well, there's all kinds of things you could do with these percentages and this data to look at where,
Right.
and therefore what additional support is needed because it has a larger population of students with special needs than other schools.
Well, I will say just to know that, we've, over the last probably 2 to 3 years, we've been moving away from cluster model to the spreading throughout all the schools. So not there yet, but constantly. And that has an impact on facilities.
Absolutely.
Because,
Yeah.
because playgrounds is what comes to my mind.
Okay.
We made sure the schools in the cluster model had heavy impact to special needs playgrounds. The other schools didn't because they weren't as,
Exactly.
didn't have the same population. Now that population is being spread back out, we have to go back and add those pieces.
Mhm. Right. So that just, I think, is one real prime example that demonstrates how it's not as simple as it looks. It's not just the building capacity and so on. And it deals with.
And depending on which type of special ed program you
Yeah.
have here, if you've got the population that needs that sensory room, right? That's a whole space that if you walk by, it looks empty because the lights are off, they're not off, but they're dim, it's quiet. But that's a space they use for PT and OT and just a little sensory downtime and all of those kind of things.
Yeah.
So that requires more spaces.
Most of your that's
Oh, yeah.
well,
I think some of that might have been temporary
Beaufort,
because of the
Yeah,
Beaufort
Beaufort
elementary
construction,
construction.
And
So
then,
some of that, if it's a program, it might go back up. I know Dr. White was talking about some movement things.
do you remember, one of the future topics is supposed to be special education, and this is the reason it prompted that was because I know there's been some shifting in philosophy. There's been shifting in things and also in locations and stuff like that. It'd be really good information to have to understand what our population is, where it is, and how it's being served,
So what exactly are you saying? Okay, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm listening to the conversation, but it just seems like you're driving someone. I'm just trying to.
Well, no, I just was reminding you all that on our future topics, I think several months ago, I had asked for an update on special ed.
Right,
And so tying that into this
right.
will give some of the meat to what you said, Carol, that perhaps some of those placements were temporary. So it would just be, so you look at this, well, this 24% is going to drop down to 18 because the plan is once some X days go by, students will move back. So
that Beaufort L is going to go from 17 to high.
absolutely. And is that the instructional intent of Dr. White and Dr. Stratos? Is that what the plan is? Or is there a plan for another location that would have a specific program?
and really with that population, you do not want to play music in schools.
Right.
When they develop a relationship,
Absolutely.
there needs to stay
Absolutely.
just.
Administration, teachers,
Well,
the building
And where the
itself.
kids live,
Absolutely.
you don't want to
and once again, that's why I'm
special
asking.
needs kids on a bus, especially the medically fragile or
Yeah.
autistic students. Transportation's a big
It is.
thing.
Right, but once again, that's why I was asking because it sounds like as we start to discuss the budget, that this is definitely something that needs to be a conversation prior to budget discussion because if those things can be put in place or a process can be started, then those that maybe want to be something that is more forward. As in with in terms of growth within SPED, because I know right now I have parents follow me, concerned about their kids getting the necessary attention in SPED, and right now we do all know that we don't have spreadsheets in our buildings, and so I might even imagine when we do get them in there, we don't work, worse than happens to have a spare teacher feel that she has a huge workload and she can't serve our kids. I mean, if we can get an outline of how we can better serve them and where we can serve them, I think that would be very, very helpful. So we know, and maybe in elementary school, I said we have one spare teacher in this elementary school here. It's okay to have assistants, but we may need 2 or 3 spare teachers. And where are we placing that? So that's what I'm driving. That's what I'm driving at in terms of the conversation that is at this.
I think that staffing conversation is very important, which is why we need Dr. White to present to us and so on. But I'm trying to look at it through the lens of the building and facilities, because that's what the focus of this,
Right.
So how do we best use our facilities for?
And I hear what you're saying. And I hear what you're saying, but in terms of using facilities, if we're having more students in certain buildings, for instance, we can use Referendum High Elementary School. If Referendum Elementary School has a large amount of sped students, then maybe we may need to have certain more sped classes and teachers to serve those students. And not if we have in Referendum Elementary School, if we have more open classrooms or space that's underused, then maybe we can create that. So that's why I bought that, because I figure one complements the other.
I agree. Yeah, nothing's in isolation. It all works together.
Right. Yes,
Absolutely. I agree.
The triangle.
Yes. No, I apologize if I misled, but that was my, yeah, that's why I asked you that question, just to be upfront.
So they are handicapped children. They go to Beaufort Elementary.
There is a
That's not-
classroom there.
I think that's the only school that they went to.
I think the severe and profound is there.
Right.
I was wondering if there was a second or something. I think there's a middle school there at. And then. I think
Beaver High.
Yeah.
Beaufort High
Yeah,
has
Beaufort High.
some as
So
well.
they do that.
Again, they try to meet the needs of the students. And homeschool as much as possible, so it just kind of, it's so specialized.
It's about King Street. Is there anything in here about King Street? I didn't see anything in here about King Street. So,
Track King Street. We have not passed.
but I mean, as far as facility, a facility and, just because Mr. Campbell, do you remember when we went and with Dr. Morel? And didn't she say she wants a larger space?
Yeah, she's just using all.
She could use a larger space. She,
I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think she said it was going to post the state also.
for funding.
I think she
Yeah.
said, she mentioned something.
So I just didn't know if, this is a facilities plan. If King Street should have been included as far as legalization of it, and then some discussion of.
The difference is, so as far as projects, we'll track projects for King Street,
Yeah.
just like any other school, that will come later. But utilization, there's no requirement to provide adult ed services. It's as they're requested, unlike public school, we're required to ensure that we have the numbers needed, where King Street is kind of for those that sign up. Did I say that
No,
clearly?
I mean, that's kind of what she said.
I mean, so we track.
Funding mechanisms different.
Right.
But I guess I was looking at it again.
So you wouldn't have a capacity.
No,
Well, you
no.
would have we wouldn't have a enrollment, a project, we can't have a
No,
projection.
No, and I'm not asking for one of these pages like King Street. I was wondering where in facilities a recommendation or a thought process on, is this the best use of a building? I mean, if the best use of,
Huh?
You know, I mean, is this, I guess, who makes the decisions that, okay, King Street is a multi-million-dollar property, downtown Beaufort, but it's the best spot that we have because we have no other space. I mean, where's even the conversation about it? Do you see what I'm saying?
No, exactly. I mean, so, there's been some sidebar, there's been nothing that specific.
But why is a Pete House included in here? What I'm wondering is all of our facilities, whether
I think
they,
you're getting into your next stage of conversation about almost if you have this extra capacity in northern Beaufort County,
okay,
what could it be used for? And
okay,
your point may be, or one of the things to investigate is that could adult ed use some of the extra capacity that we have? Could what do you call it, pre-K program,
Early childhood
program
Screen,
use
so-
some of our space.
Right.
So you're that would we do that not having the extra space? The answer would be no. That could be part of that conversation.
I think that we're saying, by saying that, though, to me, is kind of deviating from her question. And basically, I agree, because I was asked that before one time, and I kind of did thought that when I was wondering about, I was wondering about choices. I was wondering why my choices were not in there, because I remember when my choices was over here before, and then we moved over here. So I was like, how do you do the good utilization of it when it's just over here, but then we had two sides of it? So, you know, how did that? So realistically, I think that all of our buildings should be in there because of the fact that it's our job not to just worry about one building or worry about building. We have students in all of our buildings are important because it's our job to maintain and upkeeping of every single building that we have. And that's kind of the message, because the people in Pink House now, they may feel somewhere because they feel slighted because we're not worrying about the work conditions that they're working in. And the right choice is probably going to say the same thing. But then when they come up, and then all of a sudden when they do have an issue, then it's such an emergency to get it fixed and to get it up and running. So I do think that all of them, Dr. Phoebe, I think that all of them should be, and then all of them should be dealt with according to how we deal with one.
That's always been my question. Very simple. You have the right choices here, and right choices operation adult education and
some daytime we work, right? Some daytime,
daytime.
yeah.
But, you know, could adult education be also here?
I mean, I think that's more, that's where the academic side has to guide us.
Yeah.
Because I know there's some pros and
But you gotta
cons.
talk about capacity, right? You got, utilization is yours.
Yes.
And their baby is to figure out how they can educate the kids with the capacity to do.
Correct, but there are, when you get into adult education and right choices, those are special populations that have special needs that may not mix in all situations. And so really
Concurrently, I agree with you.
or even, well, we've had programs where the right choices have been more in buildings. Now, that has its pluses and minuses. You may use utilization of space better, but it may not be the best atmosphere for those sets of kids. So that's where that has to be an academic. That's where a partnership discussion, if we start to look at making those moves. Now, to your point, maybe it sounds like that's what you're asking us to do, is start looking into those items.
I think,
And Mr. Smith's comment is right on target.
Right.
About, we have to look at all the capacity because we're going to have to justify every bit of it. And if we get somebody that comes in public comments and says, "Oh, I see this stuff now," what are you doing like that? We don't want credibility. We have to think of it.
and I do think that there's only you know, this committee doesn't necessarily have the expertise that you guys have to bring that together and make suggestions. Like, okay, so we have this facility, you know, that we're paying insurance and upkeep and it's falling apart and it needs this, but we have an idea that because of this, you know, less capacity in this building, we could probably transfer this. And we talked, I just sometimes feel like okay, well, what's the next step? Well, I think you guys are the next step.
I go back to the referendum and how we got beat up by Bissy and all that crowd about utilization. And oh, you're wasting all this money and you should be consolidating so you can put more money into, you know, I mean.
Not necessarily, but we have to be able to justify it.
Exactly. I mean,
You know.
exactly. And we have to have a story
Right.
that makes sense
Right.
and says, you know, we're aware of what we got and this is how we're using it.
Right.
So what I think I just heard, and tell me if this is not what I just heard, is that you're asking us to come up with a plan for use of some of the additional capacity that we have in northern Beaufort County, which would include items such as King Street, early childhood, moving out of those buildings and into other, and right choices. Is that what I heard?
Well, I'm not sure. Not necessarily. I think more of what is going on in those buildings and then updated with the building. Same way how you update us on what's going on in Battery Creek High School. Is the same way how you updating us what's going on in Pink House, in the Pink House. What do you see could be needs? Is it growing? You know, because not long ago before us, there was just it was just and basically it was the information that the Pink House probably needed another place. So with that being said, then let's understand what they have. So in other words, if I know what's going on with my oldest son, I want to know what's going on with my middle son and my other son. I want to know what's going on with all of them. Not to say to remove any of them or to, you know, change what they're doing, but I need to know the update and understanding to be able to process and digest what each and every one of them have.
And I get, you know, this is my district and I get talked to by the islands of Beaufort and Advocate Shores over there, and they drive by this headquarters here and they say, look at all that space. What are you doing? Look at all those cars. And like county councilman, look at all those cars. You're overstaffed. That's not the case. But, you know, is this building being used? Are we using all the capacity of this building properly? You know, is our IT in the right place? I mean, there's a whole lot of issues because that's what they see as they drive by. And I'm constantly stuttering and stammering and saying, you know, I walk down the halls and I see people working in offices and you know, no one's, you know, there's a basketball court kind of over here that's being used, but you know, that's
And that's probably true. We don't advertise what happens in this building.
Exactly.
You know, bus drivers park here while they drive their car.
The maintenance folks park over there.
Yeah.
You know,
A lot of it's parking.
And when you take.
I never heard that being the problem, is that we've got too many cars out front.
Yeah.
Mine's the opposite, where our building is bursting at the seams.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
People run into closets now.
And when you take
Yeah.
a high school and try to turn it into office space, I mean, you're gonna, it's hard. It's hard to make it cohesive and.
Just so y'all know, y'all did approve last year, funding for renovation of this building. We do have an architect currently working on, and actually started last week, walking and meeting with the chief officers, so that is
8%.
yes. And then, as well, and I need to double check this, as far as King Street, is King Street being evaluated as part of the facilities assessment?
I did ask you during an operations committee to make sure to include that. I'm pretty darn sure I asked you that.
I think what we did is we told them to add that as
At the end.
at the end.
Okay.
We
But
need
they'll
to,
be finishing up this week, so.
yes, we need to make sure King Street And I mean, we can do a pink house. I mean, the thing about, and I say that because early childhood, as you know, has come, they have, the pink house doesn't even come close to me.
Oh, I know.
I mean,
And
it's
they have some space here.
Yes.
So they-
not even.
That's-
They got spaces elsewhere too.
They do.
It's mostly here in pink, and so they're trying to find space. So we're actively,
Oh, I remember you guys brought that
And-
proposal.
and the pink house is, it's just always been there and been used, and it's not a good office. I
No.
can't in any way justify it.
Right.
I mean, so I mean, if I know the end result, if I go look at it, what it's gonna be is like, this is sorely inadequate for
Right.
office space.
Right.
So,
So when you hear that, you know, and I'm not picking on the pink house, but if you hear that, okay, it's a place where our parent liaisons are and that it stores early childhood materials and the bus is parked there. And then right next door is Ladies Island Middle that has plenty of room for a bus to park and might have some room. But I mean, I'm just saying, so I am asking, you know, yes, you have to know where you are. So that's Mr. Smith's part. But I would agree with when you write it back, it says, I think I understand you're asking. Yes, what's kind of a plan? What's a plan? So, you know, again, to Mr. Smith's point, sure, this is how it's used. These are, you know, the pink house costs us for insurance and everything, you know, X zillion dollars a month. And so, but if we were to move this around and, you know, just that kind of forward-thinking planning of our facilities.
Same thing that we asked for, when we asked for. Bob reached long-term costs of mobiles. So we could respond to people say, well, why not mobile? You just get mobile. You know, I mean, that kind of extra data that we can provide, because I have to tell you, I really foresee we're going to be just raked over the coals when we go out and say what we need to do.
Exactly, which is why we
And that's why we're gonna
needed
get-
this committee.
We need this committee going because we gotta have.
It's going to be huge
Yeah.
about the excess capacity, the perceived excess, unless we can answer back and say about program capacity
talk
and
story.
right.
Have a big story.
And tell us the whole story because it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to have smaller class sizes, which means you need more classes. I mean, all of that.
And you need the professional.
Oh, yeah.
And you need the coaches. I mean, you know, all of those little pieces together.
Yeah.
Add up.
You know, you don't need, I mean, treating teachers like professionals so that they do have a professional place. They're not displaced because you have to have an IEP meeting in that room. You know, or just, you know, you have to set our schools up for the 2025 and 2030. I mean, it can't look just like 1957.
well, I mean, and that is, you know, when you're talking Northern Beaufort County, it's a completely different problem than Southern Beaufort County.
I know.
You have a shrinking population,
Yeah.
student population. And you have aging facilities. So really what you want to do is right size the facilities and improve them along the way so they can last for the next 10 to 20 years. Because we know that the facilities that we have, if everything continues the same direction, are too much. We're going to need to find better uses for them and reconfigure them. I mean, one of the things about older buildings is they have all the smaller classrooms, so maybe they need to be renovated. Part of our facilities assessment we're doing right now, maybe to look at is certain buildings, are they better renovated or better replaced?
Right. But you can't do that in a vacuum without your instructional philosophy
No.
and vision. So the instructional vision might be that they're going to be, you know, we're going to start, this is what education is going to look like in the next 10 years. And so how can we adapt? And so, I mean, you can't do it without that.
What I'm hearing too is that it seems like Dr. Stratos and Dr. Morale.
Adult ed.
Huh?
Adult ed.
Adult ed stuff.
Oh, I thought that
Dr. White is too.
Dr. White.
Yeah, like, I think at some degree, they have to be at the table to engage in this conversation and also to see what some of their, what their five, my grandma would say, what are their 3 to 5 years goals of, when do they foresee their district in this area growing as well, to see what is needed. Because that also kind of tells us what limitations that we do have. And just to say, I don't know, I think that this side of town is growing, but we're not probably as growing as fast as Bluffton because of the high relatives they have over there to grow that place. But I do think that this side it is beginning to start growing back as well. You're talking about Powers right now who's making a push to start opening these facilities back up. That helps people. Some people are going to start feeling more comfortable now moving their kids over here, knowing that those doors are opening back up. So so that's another thing just to put out there too, that we're going to have to understand that the cameras could possibly stop hurting on both sides.
I mean, to your point, I do think, and we're always watchful, that they're kind of expecting some relief. A lot of it don't. We just don't.
Right. And question going through this, what early childhood center services the Beaufort cluster?
JJJ.
St.
You got
And the
early
rest of the early
childhood
childhood's in there every school.
in the school.
So none of the early childhood centers, they all serve a school. So they're not a facility that congregates a whole lot of students unless it's that early childhood special education.
So
none of them, even the ones in Bluffton, are configured that way.
okay, so all right, so you've got the ECC at Davis, right? You've got the ECC at St. Helena. And
Well, I would just tell you where Head Start programs are because they're
right.
working with, that's at Beaufort L and Shanklin.
Bell and Shanklin.
And
so
Davis.
Oh, yeah.
And St. Helens.
Okay.
Those
All
are,
those have. the-
those are all your Head Start.
Start.
Okay, so and so where kids at like Ladies Island Elementary, Mossy Oaks, Port Royal, where are those? Am I not asking the right question?
No, well, they don't have the Head Start program,
Yeah,
They're more.
but they would have our pre-K program.
Correct.
Front River has it.
Yeah, so they don't have the Head Start, so they're not quite as large. They do have our individual pre-K programs separate from Head Start.
every school, every elementary that does not have a Head Start has their own pre-K.
I'm not.
Is that, I mean, I'm
Yeah,
just trying to.
everybody has pre-K. So I mean, you can kind of look at the enrollment.
Oh, yeah.
The enrollment
Thank you.
table,
Yeah,
and it can kind of tell you, and when you see pre-K 3, see a pre-K 4 and a pre-K 3.
yeah.
If they've got pre-K 3, that probably means they have at least one.
What page are you
They've
on?
got an early childhood, so page 43. If you look
Okay.
at enrollment by grade. So
Yes.
like Mossy Oaks has 4 pre-K 3 kids. So I'm assuming that is early childhood specialist.
Got it, okay.
Because usually
Thank you.
that's the only
Okay.
way you have 3-year-olds in pre-K.
Okay, got it. That makes sense.
So
Thank you.
there's 5 at St. Helena,
Okay,
3 at Shanklin, 3 at Hilton Head, 6 at Bluffton, 2 at MC Riley.
got it.
3 at Oak
Thank you
City.
for that. Okay.
So that shows you we're serving 26 total pre-K 3 kids in the district. Now, that they're mixed in with the pre-K 4 kids.
Right.
So the early childhood special ed class is only going to have 10 kids in it. Half of them are 3-year-olds, the other half are 4-year-olds.
Okay. All right.
And we saw, remember, I can't remember which.
I know,
That's
that's,
at Ladies Island. I remember. It was St. Helena. Where we saw the little tiny babies in there with them.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, pretty much.
Yeah.
Not the Head Start ones, but some of those pre-K classes had really tiny.
really tiny, yeah.
So those are the.
So I guess my question then is just forward thinking as far as what is going to be needed in the Beaufort cluster? You know, more, is it going
Oh, are
to need
you-
more of that?
Are you going towards the pre-K for all? Is that what you're saying?
You know what? Prior to this meeting, I was thinking along those lines, but our discussion before we even started the meeting might be, is there going to be universal pre-K? But is it going to be someday that we have to anticipate that our buildings will accommodate that, because it will be someday,
Correct.
you know?
Yes. And I think we kind of hit on that discussion somewhere and talking
Well, I
about
mean-
our needs in that if we do go towards just in our district, pre-K for all, you're talking about doubling the number of pre-K classrooms. We need every-
I mean,
At
early,
a minimum.
If you look at the kindergarten numbers.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Versus the pre-K numbers, we're serving half.
you know, when that came out early in the Biden administration, and they started talking about pushing through. the
Right.
I was like, oh my goodness.
Did your heart start racing?
Well, it's just like and you gotta realize every school district in the country is gonna be looking at that going,
Right.
there is no way you can snap your fingers and we can do pre-K for all.
Yeah.
So, and you keep, I don't know when it's gonna happen. I mean, to me, I think you need to set a goal as a district, as a time frame. Maybe it's pre-K for all in 10 years, maybe it's 20 years, maybe it's 5 years. I don't know what it is, but if you give me that number, I can start working there. Saying we're gonna be pre-K for all next year, I can't do it. There's no way. I mean,
Well, there's
Well,
certain
in
schools
Northern
we
Beaufort County,
probably
you
can.
could.
A lot of Northern Beaufort County, we
Yeah.
start
Well, let me
reading.
ask you this.
We could not
What would-
send a
What would pre-K for all, what would that do to other agencies too? Because we also want to be funding other agencies as well. What age groups does that encompass?
4 year. We're, I'm just talking about 4
Right,
years.
right. So, and then also you have Head Start who are already serving those students. So do we want to go and impede on them and do that? If they're getting services, so, you know, we have to be very friendly on how we do that. I think that could create some.
If it's a federal program, which is what they're talking about, I think they will just expand. Head Start.
Right.
I don't think Head Start will stay.
Well, right, and that would be different versus us ourselves going out and doing that.
And
Well,
So we don't
I can
know
tell
what
you
that,
that
I think
we-
that's part of that big conversation. What does that look like?
And we
What
spoke
does
to
it look
a
like?
couple of principals, and they're, you know, they have some 4-year-olds, and then in their buildings are Head Start with some 4-year-olds, and they would love to have Head Start focus on 0 to 3, and us before, remember, I can't remember which principals it were, but they're like, that way we know that when everybody is 5 and in kindergarten, we know what they've done.
Right.
So to have, I hear what you're saying, but when you go out, and that was in some of our school visits that we went to see and talked about, that they said 0 to 3.
Right. Yeah,
And then-
in my community, that would not go well. I mean, with the community serving the Head Start, and I would not be a proponent. And
Well, that's a
I
whole
mean,
other
yeah,
conversation.
yeah.
What
Yeah, and
I can
was
say
gonna
is,
say, I think that's dangerous.
I know that Head Start has been competing for the 4-year-olds, and we are in competition. I
Right.
know that they we have wanted, and now they've committed to moving more to the 3 and under.
Yes.
Because that's something we can't
We can't
serve,
do. We
there's
can't
nothing we can do about it. And that is where they can focus. Now, it's gonna, just like us, it's gonna take them a while to
Sure.
move in that direction. It's not gonna happen overnight.
Right.
So, I mean, if you want to give us guidance on the facilities, it's that plan, and that's not that's where we can work with the early childhood to start talking that and Head Start to work together to what is the 10-year plan. Because we can start setting up our budgets and our buildings based on that 10-year plan, but without that, we're just guessing.
Well, I think our 10-year plan consists of right now more of Dr. White and Dr. Stratos, and seeing what they are anticipating in our leaders in terms of programs and functioning on this side of the broad before that Head Start piece, or the 4-year. I don't think that. I'll say that's what the principals want. But the principals are not at the helm of the table to ensure what we're doing with the buildings and how we are keeping them. So I think as a member of this committee, I think that's just from me. What I see, I think that is where we possibly would better serve to start seeing, so we can start figuring out how we can start formulating the space that we do have. What are still the needs, and we can to identify what we got going on our house before we gotta start going and digging in somewhere else. That's.
I don't think that we will never get in the Head Start problem. You won't create a problem there. Because right now, Head Start has a waiting list. And it depends upon your income, how much money you make. And there's a lot of
More demand than there's supply.
right. And that's the reason why a lot of parents are saying they want their 4-year-old to go to us instead of going
Because
there.
they can't get in.
They can't get in. Because if they make over a certain amount of money, they can't.
And that plan helps us fill those capacities in northern
Right.
Beaufort County. Now, and I'm gonna bring up southern Beaufort County here. The problem is completely different in southern
There is no
Beaufort
Head
County.
Start, right?
So
No,
there is no Head Start in southern Beaufort County. Now,
No, I don't think they don't know that.
so, and they want to, I mean, it's all
They
about
want to.
space there. So we have to create that. So that our plan there is to push to create that space. Here, you're talking about how do we plan to use the space we already have? And that, if that's our plan, that helps fill some of those gaps that we're seeing.
Right.
But we.
So you're saying that if we as a board were to provide that direction, then you can do the infill
Yeah.
plan. Whereas I guess maybe I was thinking it was the other way around. You all were going to come with those ideas.
So we can't,
so-
I don't think we can give you the direction on
I heard you
where
saying
you
that.
want to go.
I hear.
or-
Yeah.
And for us,
But you can bring options, though. You can bring options. Or you can bring the.
well, I
this
mean,
is
that
what
would be academic,
Right,
not
right,
us.
right.
We wouldn't get into that.
I hear.
All I can tell you is that what we have to do typically, if you want to convert a Head Start requires hot water. It doesn't sound like a big deal, but they have to have it.
Bathrooms in every room.
And they have to have
place
bathrooms,
change
yeah.
when they're little, you know. lots of-
So our plan on something like that is adding bathrooms to
Existing.
the existing classrooms and kind of rolling that out. And where are we going to do those so that we can convert those buildings to more pre-K Head Start?
Kind of like we did when Davis went from being an elementary to the early childhood. We made those
Robert
conversions.
Small.
And
we
it's
did
licensed a
these-
different way. So it doesn't
But
go
then once again,
through our normal licensing.
but once again, I think that we lost focus into saying that we have a chance to utilize our classes the space that we do have for smaller class sizes, because now we're going there and we're going fishing in the pond that we don't have to be. We're talking about helping the kids that we do have achieve, possibly achieve. I think that it would be more fruitful for us to worry about the kids, the achievement growth that we have right now, and be able to better serve our kids in smaller class sizes and other things versus going into saying, let's just take the easy option and do Head Start. To me, I see that as the easier option
One or the
versus.
You know, it doesn't have to be one or the other. It has to be a comprehensive plan.
And that's true, but I'm saying it seems like the conversation have shifted within the last 10 minutes to say, okay, well, let's make this the focus. Or this is where we're going. So I mean,
You know what? I'm going to use one of your favorite sayings.
go ahead.
You always say that we have to learn how to chew gum.
And walk at the same
And walk,
time.
so therefore, that's kind of what this is. We're chewing gum and walking at the same time.
I would say,
I would disagree with that because it seems like when we were first discussing it, wasn't intrigued, but we started talking about filling buildings and like we found a solution. It just put Head Start in there. That's not the
I
solution.
didn't hear anybody say that. I did not hear.
Well, that how you perceive things may be different from how I perceive things.
I am sure.
Right. So yeah.
So,
well, I'd say one of the things we haven't calculated, but we can, is that when you're talking about teacher to student ratio in northern Beaufort County, if you take out Coosa, take out Broad River, maybe Beaufort High, your student to teacher ratios are going to be down 15 and less. It's going to be, you look at a well branch, I think Freddie was saying, you're down at 12 students for every teacher. So, and what we're seeing is the trends is those are going to get smaller. So the student to teacher ratio is already there. It's already created itself. So those are in existence today in most places. Now, we might say that we need to create more student teacher ratio in Coosa and Broad River, but outside of that, all the other ones are we're already pretty low.
Do you have the accurate stats to prove what you just said? Because you actually have to pass it, you haven't seen. So
No,
I
that's-
would go off facts, not just things that you spitting from the hip.
Understood?
Appreciate that.
Now, as far as, adult ed building that they're using, that many of their programs come under the state,
Which ones?
adult education.
Oh, yeah.
And I think you need to sit down and talk with Mrs. Dr. Morrell. And she can kind of give you an idea of where she's going. And she did mention some time ago that she was gonna be talking to the state. Because, I don't even think they can use upstairs.
No.
They can't.
It doesn't have an elevator. So it's not 88.
So that's it.
And I think she did kind of mention things she would like to. Yeah.
Right,
We
yeah.
did those visits with you all. So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't think anything, just looking into stuff and coming up with ideas doesn't mean anything's being done. Doesn't mean anything's changing. It's just, okay, what are the pros and cons of this, you know?
That is a good point. I don't think we've done that on Freddie, but we could get Freddie. He speaks the language a little better. Just what is her wish? She could get whatever she wanted.
Yeah,
And maybe somewhere out there it fits. So,
yeah,
huh?
I was at Fred, I think Freddie was with
Yeah,
us
Freddie.
that day.
She wants her room.
yeah. she-
No, but how much?
I don't know.
I don't know.
So is it double? Is it triple? Is it 1.5 times? I don't know. What she feels like she
Did
can
she want
answer.
something in Bluffton too?
She did. She
She
wanted
wanted something
she
in
wanted
Bluffton.
some expansion in Bluffton as well, which again, is the opposite problem.
It's a problem.
Right, right. And it is such a valuable program.
Yeah,
It is such a valuable program to have that, just by looking at this doesn't mean we don't think the program is not valuable.
We already, if you went to your next slide, I think that's the,
Kind of,
we already did.
I think we've kind of already done that. You talked some about the site visits, you were talking about how that ties into what you're seeing, look at. I think we already did there, so.
No, I know, I just, I'm not, I'm not trying to rush that. Let me talk a little bit about,
yeah.
okay,
right.
so I asked to have,
Before we move on,
Yeah.
you did give us, this plan concept of what to use in space. I think that is something we haven't done before. We're going to have to work through it. What kind of time will we think? I mean, that is something you want.
What is that again? So can you tell again?
A plan on how to use the spaces that we have in the county, whether it is academic recovery, whether it is finding space for adult ed, whether additional space for adult ed, whether it is, now we need the guidance on the early childhood, additional early childhood spaces. What are we wanting a plan for how those spaces?
Well, and I think Dr. Stratos put in her little list there too about other things, community involvement.
Mhm.
How much do you all want community in our schools? Medical, dental, we have some of that now, certainly.
Yeah, we do.
You know, I don't know if you all have those conversations with those agencies. Are they looking to expand, those kind of things as well, so some of that guidance
It's
and
kind of a
developing
big undertaking.
this plan needs to incorporate those conversations as well. So,
and I agree. And so I think sometimes it's difficult to know what the next step is, but it's got to start somewhere. And, you know, because it is so comprehensive. But you're right. Some of the principals with whom we spoke said they wanted to even have, you know, a place where kids could stay the night if they needed a safe place. I mean, principals are talking about being a community hub. And, oh, I know, I know. But I think if you start with what we have, and is this the best utilization of what we have in your opinion? And I'm not even looking for a plan necessarily, like this is what we think should happen, but these are some options. And it might come out that you're like, what we have now is exactly the best option. You know, I mean, it's really kind of
I'm
clear as
opposite.
mud, right?
I think what we do is come back at the next meeting with kind of a game plan.
Right,
Okay.
yes, I think so.
Yeah. Now, I think y'all, on y'all side, the homework is what do you want to do with early childhood? We can get the academic side to help lead that conversation.
And the committee. That's what we talked several times about combining, like
Yeah.
having academic and ops together or finance and ops, but
There's always
Yeah.
nothing's that close to overlap, right?
And then I think also when it comes to the early childhood, I think that early childhood has a director. I think that we would need to invite him to the table as well.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
because I'm going to continue to say that we must be good neighbors to other agencies, because I have gotten reports that we haven't been good neighbors. So therefore, that's why I'm going to put that out there, because I've known of it, and I am not going to move in a way that disrupts my community or it brings problems to what we're trying to do. So yeah, so I'm going to say that, yeah, that definitely that we should have that table.
But I also think EdStar has to understand that they come under federal, and we cannot.
And that's true, Mr. Campbell, but that's not here or there. At the end of the day, it's about
What I'm saying is this: the federal government has their own rules and procedures, and we can't change ours along with them. You know, we can help them as far as give them some space for Head Start, but we cannot change our policies and our procedures to abide by what the federal procedures that they want.
And I don't think that's what they're asking, Mr. Campbell. They're asking to be good neighbors. That's how I understand it. I think you're father.
No, what I'm saying is this: even when they talk about the cleaning of the building, you know, we had that argument over there and about the grass cutting. You know, federal government doesn't have anything to do with that. But
And who was talking about that?
huh?
Who was talking about the grass cutting?
Head Start, Mr. What's his name?
Mr. Williams?
Williams, yes. We had a long discussion at the City Hall concerning that issue. You know. So. So, you gonna come back with?
Yeah, I think what our goal is to come back with kind of just a summary of how we can approach this problem.
Okay.
I mean,
All right.
I think we're ready to kind of a timeline and maybe steps that we need to do to develop a plan.
So you want to talk with Dr. Morale?
Yes, I think that's definitely one of the pieces.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, just not before the next meeting. That may be a piece in our plan.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Not on that topic,
Okay.
just on this.
Okay.
I did ask Robin to include this in our committee today with Mr. Campbell's permission, because there is a section on here. This is the PowerPoint in the 2019 referendum. And if you turn to page, sorry, what page I saw this on. 15, 16, page 16. All right, so on page 16, phase 2 referendum. It says November 8th, 2022 or November 7th, 2023. So anticipation of another referendum. The remaining items would be those listed here. I'm looking at the second bullet. The The second bullet says Ladies Island Middle School renovations or replacement following a community committee tasked with right-sizing northern Beaufort County schools. So obviously, I mean, I don't think this is, you know, an edict. You don't necessarily have to follow this, but it's the right thing to do to get the community involved. But what does that look like? And is this something, I mean, where does one start with this? And so I'm throwing it out there.
Yeah, I really think that we need to have a series of town hall meetings in all through Northern Beaufort County. Well, Branch would be Go, Leo, St. Helena, Burton, you know,
Yeah, Mossy Oaks.
Mossy Oaks,
Right.
all of those.
Shell Point, yeah.
And, you know, to me, I think we have to say, here's our problem. I think the first, rather than we designing this thing, here's what we think we ought to inform you about. Inform the public, here's our challenge. And lay all the data out. And be specific to their area and say, okay, now, here's what we're trying to deal with. We're trying to deal with capacity. We're trying to deal with efficiency. We're trying to deal with supporting the community.
Fiscal constraints.
Fiscal constraints, and let them tell us what they think. And then we take that back, put it all together, and then come back to them and say, okay, we heard what you said. Now, here's course of action 1, course of action 2, course of action 3. What do you think? At least we could start to narrow it down to see where we're going to be. That to me is a process that will take some time. But if we don't do that, we're going to be in big trouble.
Do you want to do it by clusters or do you want to do it by?
I think it has to be by area.
Yeah.
Well, my first question is, why are we even doing that when we haven't seen what the use of what use we can get out from the two? We haven't seen what the vision is for I think we put the cotton for a horse. We do that.
You don't understand me, Mr. Smith. What I'm saying is, we tell them the situation. This is, let's say we're going to St. Helena.
Right.
We have a meeting with St. Helena, and we're going to talk about St. Helena Elementary and Ladies Island.
Right.
And we meet at the library.
Right.
And we say, okay, let me show you what we have today.
Disaster.
Well, you know, lay it all out.
Right.
Lay it all out. Say, this is what we've got.
Right.
This is what we think we want to do, but we want to hear what you think we should do.
Right.
And boom, 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 boom. Listen, I want to have this. I want to have that. We definitely want to keep both schools. Or we'd like to have it in one place. I don't know what they're going to say. We say what we got. You tell us what you think. And then we get back with all of the areas do the exact same thing. And then we pull it all together and we say, okay, we can't take one area in isolation on how we're going to fix this thing. We're going to have to then take all that input, come back and say, okay, here is a course of action, one course of action, and it's going to be here, here, here. And we go right back to that same group and get their feedback on it. Are they all going to agree? You know, I mean, we're not going to please everybody, but at least if we can hear them all.
Right, but I am, once again, I will say it's a disaster because now you're putting them up in arms because they're
going to be up in arms sooner or later.
Well, and that may be the point, but I'd rather go to them with a plan in place and understanding and knowing what's the possibility versus going to them, telling them, and they've already said that the same referendum committee and the same board wants to close down the school down. So therefore, what was that? I'm telling you, I'm telling you, but that's what we're walking into. Why start up our hornet's nest when we don't have to until we have some solid facts about, hey, this is what we're thinking, but also what are y'all thinking? And then now they're less on the defense because they're understanding that we put some work in trying to make good use spatial utilization of space and also to get your feedbacks versus just going in there saying, look here, hey, the space is unutilized. When you start off with that, I'm telling you, we're going in there and we're stirring up a hornet's nest. I'm just telling you, I witnessed. I mean,
I don't think so, because, I mean,
Mr. Kilby, you don't know what the people think on my
okay, let
time.
me explain something to you. I'm talking about, we know ladies on middle school has to have another school or renovation. We know that. Ain't no doubt in our mind. Because when we went there, the principal showed us the water's coming down. And you go in there, that's, my kids went to that ladies on middle school, so I know where it was built. They need another middle school. So if they get upset because of that, then tough, you know. But we have to provide for those children so they're on the ladies island. And, you know, where are they going to go to school then? You know, you got to look at Cape construction, parking lots and driveways, sidewalks. Riverview need a gym. They can't play basketball. They have to go someplace else to play basketball. That's one of our schools. We need furniture. We need land. You know, so those are things that if they get upset, then, you know, tough. That's what I look at it.
You know, again, I'm saying is tell us, before we start planning anything.
Right.
Tell us what you want.
Right.
Tell us what, this is the hill I'm gonna die on. That school has to stay here, period. Okay, we got that.
Or tell us that.
Or tell us that,
Middle
you know,
needs to
maybe-
be K-8.
Yeah, maybe it
Tell
could be
us
a K-8,
that, I don't know.
whatever. But until we know, and you know who's gonna come, people that are gonna come to that first one are gonna be the people that are gonna stay and look and see what we come back with.
Right.
And so let them vent on us. You're right. It's going to be emotional. It's going to be a storm. I agree with you. But frankly, that's what we should start with. And so we know how to package it and come back to them and say, we heard you. Here's our constraints. Here's our courses of action. Which one would you like? Or you don't like any of them? Well, okay. That tells us something. But that gives them a sense that they are a part of the process.
Well, go ahead.
I mean, if I can, I'm gonna, I agree with most of what you say. I want to throw a different approach on it. Maybe we start with what is their ideal school. What we have today, what does everybody see? Because let's take St. Helens Elementary, it's a prime example. I don't think I was disheartened to hear you say that you believe that they think they're going to close it, because under no plan we ever talked about it.
No.
And I think St. Helens Elementary is a prime example. What do they want in that school? Let's say we want to renovate it. What does that mean? What does that mean for St. Helens Elementary? If we're
We add the medical, the dental, the
Right.
things that
Yeah.
the community
So
needs that
so instead of the
instructional
approach of
services already identified, they like to go down those roads.
Parent support room.
Right.
So
Support room.
let's look at what
Whatever.
everybody wants, and then look at what we have, then talk about how they match up, and then talk about how we move forward. That's what I think is.
But a quick question. So one of the things that came in a past strategic plan, that it was some years ago, when you were talking about community, like at Broad River, in one of the strategic plans, they talked about having dental. They had been-
Right.
That came up in a past strategic plan. In our current strategic plan, are there any things, are other ideas, you said professional development, are those things that we should be pulling out to also add to the table to say, you know, what if, what possibilities?
I think kind of that's where part of that list from Dr. Stratus came from.
Okay, that's what I'm.
Pulling out of what was in that
Gotcha.
strategic plan. Again, that was just focusing what she thought was facilities.
Mhm.
But there may be other things that nobody really thought of in a facilities lens as well.
No, when you say when you say medical and community. They had that conversation to have it at Broad River.
Right,
Dr.
right,
Shepherd,
that's how we got it.
yeah, because Dr. Shepherd brought it up at that time.
Yeah.
And you still have the data from the committee that went and visited all the schools, got all $600 million worth
A lot
of.
of that's.
Yes.
That's a start.
Well, and also the facilities assessment we're having right now.
Right.
Yes, yeah, oh, yeah, absolutely.
That'll
Absolutely.
help determine.
We got to be able to say, this school needs to be torn down and built. But this
That's
school,
really crucial.
we can renovate this school.
Because, yeah, when you start talking about the modern, what people want out of their school, there may be some buildings that just don't match up to that.
But we could start giving that kind of information to say, look, we've looked at St. Helena Elementary, and it's fine, it's got good bones, it could be renovated, or nope, it's gotta be, start from scratch. And you're right, Ladies Island Middle School is.
Yeah.
Driveway is actually one of the biggest, we can make a huge improvement at St. Helena.
I know, that's when we visited,
Yeah.
you pointed out just that entrance, but anyway, so Mr. Campbell, do you think it would be a good idea for our next meeting along with the plan? What you're bringing back, not a plan, but to bring back some ideas of how to maybe approach this, because
Well, I
I'm
was
sure
gonna
Frank
say-
has some ideas, and I'm sure.
I do agree with Mr. Smith.
Are we running? It seems like, it's gonna be like we're kind of running to get things done. I mean, because I want to give them time to process too. So I'm like, I know that you had this put in because you had already thought about this, about this idea.
Mr. Smith,
about
this is from 2019.
Right, and I understand.
So it's
right.
time to think about it,
Right,
so.
and I understand that, but also this didn't happen overnight, and we're not gonna be able to end this overnight, and I just.
So are you hearing what I'm asking, Mr. Auden? Or what am I asking him?
Yeah, you're asking him to basically, when you come back, what's gonna be the parent expectation of that?
No, I'm not asking that.
Okay, so-
I'm asking Mr. Campbell if he feels, as chair of this committee, it's appropriate to ask Robert to come back with some ideas of how a community could happen. What would be the best? I'm sure Frank has some ideas on whether Dick's idea is correct, your idea. What would be a way he would want to start to address the stated concern that there has to be a community committee? Will we follow the same format where every board member would recommend a few community members? Because that's what we did last time. What might be some ideas of how to get it started? But if this is never put on the table to talk about, then it's never going to happen. So I'm not running down to try to get something done overnight. I'm trying to get a process started.
And we cannot wait, because we're talking about.
Clearly we're not waiting, we're moving on, but I'm just saying that the speed of it is concerning. Because right now, we're emotional, it's like we're emotional about getting things done. And I think that, unlike some people, I don't like to just make emotions based off of what I said now. She already have time to think about it because apparently she brought it forward. So I want time to think about it and how I can best serve my community, how I can help get this done. But say that we made it done today, we want to go with this option and get it done. I'm not there. No, I've heard you. That's just once again that I feel missional.
Mr. Campbell, I'm asking you.
Mr. Auditor can come back with the information, how we should do. Because we cannot sit around, you're talking about this is March. November will be here pretty soon. And we can't be until November to start talking about that. If Mr. Smith, if you haven't looked at that and go over and look at it and bring it back to your ideas also. Not just one person, but you can do that. I've never.
Yes, sir.
It doesn't have to be at our next meeting, but I would say the second meeting from today. Actually, the third meeting from today.
So our next meeting and our next meeting would be next month, and what would be our agenda topics for our next month meeting?
It would be.
And our next meeting will be still meet in March or because?
No, we will meet in April.
We'll meet in April.
April.
So our next meeting in April would be April 26th.
And 26th, that's okay.
That's a Tuesday?
That's a
April
Tuesday.
26th?
Yes, that's a Tuesday.
Yeah. And the agenda would be what the things that the act was on and you come over and.
I have to be in Charleston.
On the 26th?
What about the 25th? The 25th?
Good, now that's the Monday.
That's a Monday.
Yeah.
Except for Robert. Well, yeah,
So,
on
25th.
Monday.
Monday, the 25th.
at what time?
Well, this, right now it's open, so you all tell me.
As long as it's in the afternoon.
2:30 or,
I should know this, but when is spring break? Is it the
It's
week
before that. It's 2 weeks before that, yeah. That was fine.
Okay, you ready, available, Mr. Smith?
At this point, that's why.
When's the facility condition assessment supposed to be completed?
Well, I think we talked the other day, and actually we picked a meeting and finished talking about it. We were looking at probably bringing the 8% list, the whole 8% list, bring shooting for in May,
Okay,
with a thought of having initial review in May, have a second meeting in May, have a meeting in June to review, and the idea of bringing it to the board by the final meeting in June. So that's 3 shots at it prior to going to the board, is what I'm thinking.
Finishing up the walk. That's just the beginning of the whole thing.
April 25th, at what time, Mr. Campbell?
that's 2:30?
2:30.
Is that what you're talking?
So are you wanna,
So the next meeting, we're gonna come back with, a outline of how to address an outline of capacity use in northern Indiana.
right,
It's an outline for an outline.
And that
for-
one for a plan on how.
Yeah. Yeah, plan outline for northern Houston County capacity issues.
And then are you also, and then the next one
the
will
next
be
meeting will be.
the one about
How
how we could address, excellent.
Okay.
Plan outline for capacity use for northern Houston.
Anything else? You're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your participation.
Ms. Frederick, I need you to set up some meeting.